How's it going? This is Zach with US Fitness Products. Today I'm going to show you how to assemble the Hoist V4 Elite. This also applies to the Hoist V1 Elite. We're going to go through the daunting task of trying to assemble this thing. I know when you open the thing up and you see the user's manual, it's a bit of daunting and scary, but we'll Bob Ross this thing and hopefully by the end of it you got yourself a pretty little machine. So as far as assembly, these are all the tools that are necessary. What you would need is an impact drill, a 3/4 inch, a 9/16 and a 1/2 inch socket, as well as the wrenches in 9/16 and 3/4 and a handheld socket wrench, as well as Allen keys. If you have them impact rated, that's great. If all you have is hand tools, that'll work fine. First thing we're going to do is assemble the frame. You're going to need some bolts and some nuts and some washers for that. They're all labeled in the book, but just so you're aware, that's going to be bolt 153, washers 107, and the nuts are going to be 140. You're going to need 2 of each. So we'll go ahead. I already have those pulled. So what we will do is first we got to put this back right here, and then we'll take this guy and we'll line it up right here. I'm kind of a stickler for bolt uniformity. I try and make all of them go the same direction. You don't necessarily have to do that. It's not going to affect the condition of your machine. And one of the main things to remember when you're assembling this machine is you don't tighten anything until you get to the end. If you tighten it now, you may have misalignments. Cables may not go on correctly. There's all sorts of problems that can arise from doing it that way. And continuing with assembling the base, we have these 4 bolts right here. They will be labeled in your book, but they are your next step. So you just line up your back bolts here, and we just run them through. Washer and nut on there as well. It's just a word of the wise. We come in 2 different sizes on this machine. You either have the 150 or the 200. When you are tightening these bolts, I suggest doing them in a cross pattern. So you do your left upper one, your bottom right one, then your left bottom one, and then your upper right. Reason being is with all the weight on here, you need to make sure that you're not cinching this down in a weird angle, because if you do, you'll have all sorts of alignment problems with your weight stack. All right, step 1 complete. All right, so after that, what we'll do is we will add our guide rods. So the guide rods are what your weights are going to sit on. It's gonna be these 2 large metal rods right here. All right, so when bolting these in, you need to make sure that you have your lock washer closest to the head of the bolt. And the easiest way to do these is literally to just grab it, put the bolt through the hole, and you can either spin the bolt, or like I like to do, is I'll spin the bar. And you want to leave these kind of loose. You don't want them cinched all the way down yet, because if you cinch them all the way down, we're going to have a hard time lining up the top. So you see how there's a little bit of play in this bar? We're going to leave it like that until we're pretty much done. All right, and see how we still have a little bit of play on this bar? That is what we want. Okay, now as I stated earlier, 2 weight variations on this. You either have a 150-pound stack or a 200-pound stack. This one is a 150-pound stack. So with that said, we need to put spacers for it. Otherwise, your 19-hole pin won't fit properly. So for your 150-pound stack, these are your spacers. These come in the pack. You need to take this large plastic spacer, then you'll have this hard plastic spacer right here. Here how it's hard plastic, that sits right on top of the spacer, then soft rubber. See, soft rubber. We put the soft rubber all the way on top. That's where your weight plates are going to contact. Now luckily for me, these are already labeled. Yours will not be labeled. You'll have to label them yourself. which out of all the tasks making this machine, that is one of the easier ones. So I don't think we'll need to roll through that. And that's how you assemble the weight stack. Next is just a small step. We're gonna go ahead and put on so this is for when you're doing leg extensions. This is for something to hold on to you. This goes under your seat. Inside of the book, all your bolts will be labeled. So be sure to check for the labeling of the bolts. It can get a little frustrating at times because some of these bolts are really just a couple of millimeters difference. So to the eye, it doesn't look any different, but you put it on the machine, it's completely different. That's that. So next thing that we're gonna put on, I would suggest using 2 people if you're not terribly familiar with doing it, but this is gonna be your center mast. This is the main piece of the machine that comes up from here. So to install the bottom mast, the first thing you're gonna need is these 2 guys right here. These are gonna be what's going to hold that upper mast in place. First, we're gonna just put the bottom of them on, and then we'll slide the mast into place. So this install requires some spacers. I believe these are marked as 63 in the booklet. These are gonna be your smaller spacers. There should be 2 or 3 different spacers in that pack. This will be the smaller of the 3. So usually what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put the back end in first. And just let it sit up against that little, that seat. Excuse me, that hold that we just put in. Obviously before we put that side on, should probably put this in. And like I said, you can just let it sit up against this for now. I'm gonna put your nut on just so you don't have to worry about that falling off when you put in your next bolt. You'll come to find that that's a pattern a lot of times. If you got multiple bolts you're putting in, you're gonna put in one, put the nut on it, and use that as a balance point. And here's the other fun part, finding exactly where the hole is. Some of these bolts are so long that you think you're going in straight, but you just don't get through to the other side. Okay, so that's the initial setup of that. So your next step is going to be installing the center mast. Like I said, doing this with 2 people works. It's definitely a bit easier if you're not familiar with it, but you can do it by yourself, and I will show you how. So go ahead and get your bolts, get them set up. In this case, I'll be taking all the nuts off and 1 washer off as well, since I'm going to need to put that washer on the other side. And then what I usually do is I'll take one of the bolts in my hand. Let's go ahead and get this center mast installed. So what I will usually do, since it sits on the frame, I'll go ahead and sit it directly on the frame, and I'll put that top bolt in. Because with that top bolt in, and it's sitting on the frame, you shouldn't have to worry about it sliding all over the place. It may move a little bit, but it shouldn't get away from you entirely. Now, while you still have that in place, I'll grab my next bolt, I'll do the bottom one. The bottom one will lock it completely in place. So now, you don't have to worry about it. Every now and then you'll get a bolt that wants to be a little difficult. If that's the case, sometimes a little tap will do it. You may have to adjust a little bit, push forward or backwards. But if you do, just try not to ruin the threads. Once those threads on the end of that bolt goes, it's going to be extremely hard for you to put a nut on it. So the next thing we're going to install is actually a guide wire for a floating pulley. It really doesn't seem to have any function, but once you get later into the assembly of this, it'll completely make sense. As of right now, it's just going to hang in place. Super easy install. So you're using what's called a jam nut. So you take the cable up through the hole, you take your jam nut, cinch it onto the cable, push it back down into the hole. That's literally it. There's another piece that goes to this. It actually attaches on the bottom. So this has the pulley attached to it as well, which is a later part of the instruction. I'll go ahead and detach this so that we can add it when the instructions call for it. But for now, we're gonna go ahead and attach the bottom piece to that cable this is that bottom piece that I was talking about, this guy right here. So you literally just screw it to this, and that's it. We just leave that hanging for now. We'll come back and we'll finish that later in the process. All right, so our next step, we're gonna be putting on the top. So this is only 2 bolts to connect. I already have them in place. I'm gonna head and take those off. I would suggest if this is your first time doing this to maybe get a hand. This piece is it's a little heavier than you would imagine. And in order to install it, you kind of have to hold it with a couple of fingers, get that bolt in. But we'll go ahead and get this lined up and mounted. Pretty simple, just over the top. Like I said, if you can hold on to it with one hand, get that hole lined up, that bolt in there. There we go. So they are in, it's holding it in place, but as per usual, we gotta get over to this side and get it properly adjusted. There we go. Now we're lined up. Get those guys right through. Go ahead and put your washers and nuts on. Hold it in place. It's just that easy. Now, when you're attaching this, you're also going to want to attach your guide rods. 2 bolts that do that. Also, when you receive this, there will be 2 plastic gaskets that are right up here. They are tied in. Just be careful. Those are really easy to lose. It's these 2 plastic gaskets. So it's just these 2 plastic gaskets. They place right here. And then your next step is you'll see how these bars are sitting a little low. As long as you keep it loose, you should be able to lift up that head and get those bars under there. And all we're gonna do is we're just gonna seat these bolts. Again, we're gonna leave everything loose. The looser you leave it, the better. The next step in the book would be to put your feet on. You have these 2 metal plates that you'll receive that are same color as your frame. They're in this weird kind of like, I don't know, it looks kind of like a chicken drumstick shape. We'll show you real quick. So you got this guy. You'll get 2 of these. The only reason this machine doesn't have 2 is because it was already pre-set up with an additional feature of a leg press. So the leg press takes up this side. But you would take both of them, you set it up just like so, you go all the way through, just like that. And mind you, like I said, there would be the same plate on this side if you're just doing the V Elite base model. And all this is going to do is offer you more stability, because that is a slight rocking point for this machine. And without those feet, you're going to get a little bit more side to side than you're going to want. And that's how you install those feet. Easy. So the next thing we're going to install is your curl cable. This goes onto the right side of the machine if you're facing the machine. This is going to allow you to do, you know, your basic cable machine, low cable machine things. You can do rows, curls, all manner of things. I'm sure there's videos that we have that'll show you exactly what you can do with these. Very easy to install. The only thing I want you to be cognizant of is see these cushion bearings. They do fall out relatively easy. Just make sure that they are in there. Just go ahead and slide them in. Line her up. That's it. Washer and nut on the bottom. And that's all it took. Now I will note one thing. Just to make your life easier, go ahead and tighten this down now. This is going to be the only thing we're going to tighten down before it has pulleys in it. The reason being is once you put this pulley in, you're not going to be able to get to that bolt. So that's a 3/4 bolt. We'll go ahead and grab the tools and tighten that down. So easiest way to do a lot of this is go ahead and grab an impact wrench and your standard hand tool wrench. This is going to catch your nut, and this is going to drive your bolt. That's it. You just want to make sure that you don't over tighten. You can push against those cushion bearings and make it difficult for this to slide side to side. There is a sweet spot. I would suggest just trying it out and finding which one works for you. The next thing I'm going to install is the bar for your leg extension. This is already set up. Usually you're going to have to install this upholstery, which is very easy, very self-explanatory, is in the book. So usually there's this little handle that you would install, and that's what we're going to go ahead and do now. Again, as I noted earlier in the video, I am a bit of a stickler for bolt uniformity. If you notice, all these bolts are going from the right to the left. This is also another instance of cushion bearings, where you want to make sure you don't over tighten. If you do, this will not move freely, and definitely makes for a less fun workout. See, that's almost too tight. You see how it stays in place like that? So when it's too tight like that, all you want to do is you can either take 2 wrenches, which is probably better than using a power tool for this. So go ahead and take a hand socket wrench and a standard wrench, and you want to just give it like a quarter spin until this starts moving more freely. There we go. That may be there's a sweet spot. That might be a little too loose. So we're going to tighten just a little bit. That's great. That's what we're looking for. So one of the main things you'll notice is that it swings back and forth, but if you grab it and you slide it side to side, you're not going to hear a lot of chatter. So next we're going to install your knee pads. This is what you use for your legs to go over while you're doing your curls or your extensions. Pretty easy to install. I'll show you. So again, this is with the pads already put on it. When you receive it, it's just going to be a bar straight across. You'll have to install the pads yourself. But it's simple, you just like that. And this is another one that we want to maintain mobility on, because we want this to be able to go all the way up and all the way down. So we want it to hit there and hit here. So we just make sure we don't over tighten again. We're almost there. Trying to find that sweet spot. That's it right there. That's it. So that's installed now. Next thing we're installing is the mount for your press arm. So this is going to house all of your pulleys for your press arm. This is the first thing we're going to put on for the press arm. So what you're going to do is you'll have 2 of these in your pack. You're going to grab the shorter of the 2, place it right here amongst these gold rings, and then you'll see that there's this badge right on front. That's going to be facing out. And if you look, there's 2 saddles up here, right up here up top. See how these saddles are lined up? They're literally just going to go up and over that bar, up, over, sit right on it. Now you're on the bar. In this instance, I would grab yourself a bench, maybe a stepping stool, a jump box, something along those lines if you have it, because you're going to need to be able to drill down from up here. So in this instance, I'm going to go ahead and use a bench, and you're going to take these little half moons. See how you have your holes up top here? Go ahead and place them into that rack. And I found the easiest way to do this is to go ahead and set at least 1 screw in there. Make sure you keep it flush with it, or else that screw will drop down. Yeah, go ahead and keep that half moon pushed up against it so that the holes stay lined up. And then go ahead and take your drill. And we're just going to start it. We don't want to go all the way down, because we can do what's called cross threading if we push it all the way down, because the angle of the second hole, it'll be too severe. These you can tighten all the way down. That's one side. Exact same setup on the other side. Take your half moon, go ahead and get her in there. Throw one of the screws just in the hole, should stay in place. Sorry if my hand's in the way here. Slightly tighten it down, just a couple spins so it stays in place. Push it up against it, get the backside in, tighten it all the way down. All right, so this is now attached. Now we're gonna do what I would probably consider the most daunting task when assembling these, is routing your cables. The reason being is sometimes the book can be less than gracious in giving you very specific directions. So there may be some hit and miss here, some trial and error. Hopefully we can negate most of that by showing you how it's done today. So first off, we'll go ahead and attach this to your weight stack. Go ahead and take your jam nut all the way off. And we're gonna go ahead and put your weight pin onto your jam nut. Literally just slide that key ring right on there. We'll take this jam nut, we will slide it back. And we're really just gonna put about a 1/2 inch of this into the top of the stack. We can adjust it later, but it says it only needs about a 1/2 inch or so of grip to be workable, to be usable. All right, now we route. So first move is gonna be this guy up through here. You wanna make sure that you don't catch any of your rails. Sometimes the cable will wrap around there. Please try and catch that earlier. The earlier the better, because otherwise you're gonna have to pull everything out and reroute it, and that can be a little tedious. Today we're gonna have four different kinds of pulleys. So we have your 4.5 inch thin pulley, and then we also have your 4.5 inch wide pulley. We also have your 3.5 inch narrow pulley, and then there's also a wide version of this. I'll show you when we run into one. First off, you're gonna take your 4.5 inch narrow pulley, and this is gonna be your first pulley that you're going to install for your upper cables. So if you come back here, all right, so first we gotta drop the cable down into the machine, just like that. And if you look back here, you'll see this bar right here. So there's bars like this on a lot of these machines. This is what's called a cable guard. You need to make sure that your cable is always running underneath this cable guard. This is in place so that the cable doesn't come up off of the pulley and derail. So we'll take this 4.5 inch pulley, take your cable, place it inside of the pulley, then go ahead and push that pulley over. This has 2 spacers for this. These are 2.5 inch spacers. Put one spacer on, thread through the pulley, spacer on the other side. You go all the way through. That's that. That is your first pulley. Easy enough. Your next pulley down the line. So interestingly enough, the next thing that we're supposed to put on is a floating pulley. But I'm gonna tell you here right now today that we can put this on later. The reason being is that this creates more headache than it's worth if you put it on, because it weighs enough to pull the cable out from where you need to route it. So we'll go ahead and just set this down for now, and we'll move on to the next pulley in line. So again, let's get an interior shot right here, if you can. And you'll see right here, there is a piece of rubber. This is for that floating pulley that I was just talking about. So we're gonna route past that. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take your 3.5 inch pulley, go ahead up here, put the cable onto the pulley, and just push it up to where it's supposed to go. You'll see that there's this large hole up top here, which means we'll be using spacers for this one. So we just get it into the pulley, just do the same thing on the other side. You got your spacer, go ahead and plug her into that hole up there. We're gonna put that nut on. Don't cinch it all the way down, it's not necessary. So this pulley in particular uses its own guide bolt that we install. You'll see that there's a hole right above where this pulley was installed. So again, this is just to make sure that that cable doesn't jump up out of the pulley, causing you any kind of derailments, which will in turn make it extremely difficult for you to work out. So we just install it just like so. And now we're on to the next step. So moving on in our pulley installing journey, next thing we're gonna do for this press arm, is we're going to install these 3.5 wide pulleys. So this is, as you can take note here, there is a lot of stuff going on here. We have 4 pulleys that we're going to be installing in just this area. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this guy, and like I said, this is a 3.5 inch wide pulley. And we'll go ahead and install this guy down here. As you'll see, the cable runs underneath it. All right, so that one is in. Next, we're going to use a standard 3.5 inch pulley. And this one is going to go to the actual arm mount that we installed earlier. So we have to take this cable and run it towards the back. So we will wrap it around this pulley, just like so. If you can keep it on there, more power to you. And then go ahead and install it right in here, just like that. And then we need another pulley to go right here. That's going to be another wide 3.5 inch pulley, but you need to make sure that you use your curved washers for it. I believe they are marked as 93 in the book. They have a very slight curve to them. Obviously, you're going to want to make sure that the curve is in line with the curve on the bar. Otherwise, you'll just bend them out of shape. And we're essentially doing the same thing with this pulley that we just did, except we're going to go back out the other way. So up and over this pulley. Get your pulley in place. It's just like that. Now usually, as I stated before, I'm a bit of a stickler for bolt uniformity. All these are going the other direction. It's fine, they don't have to all be the same direction. So this pulley can be the worst one out of the bunch sometimes, just because of how much the space has been limited. So easiest way to do this, route the cable through, take your pulley, push down the cable. Oops, see, I can't even do it. Push the cable down, slide that pulley into place. This is where it gets a little interesting because you're gonna have to hold it into place. And if you got big hands like me, you gotta jam your funky hands in there. Here we go. Here's something to be said, and it's kind of silly. If you're not used to doing construction or building things a lot, you're going to drop a lot of this stuff, especially the nuts, bolts, and washers. Do yourself a favor. If you do drop something, don't continue what you're doing. Follow the washer, follow the nut, because those things will get lost so quick, and without them, you're not going to be able to build anything. Forward. You got another 3.5 standard. This is going to go right here in the upper assembly. We just push that pulley right into the cable. Push this guy in there. These are, again, these are going to have spacers. And also, I'm not sure if I said, but if you're using spacers, predominantly don't need to use washers for spacers. They essentially have their own washers built in, as you can see right here. We're almost to the tail end of the upper assembly here, so you can do your lat pull downs and chest press. So this is where your lat bar will hang. You have a final pulley that'll go right here. So this is how we install this. We want to make sure that the cable actually sits above this one. I know I just went over this whole thing saying that if you see a bar like this, it's a cable guard, it needs to be under it. Again, they enjoy confusing us on occasion. So, cable runs over this guy because we're putting a large 4.5 inch pulley right here that will keep it high enough that it won't contact that. All right, here's our large 4.5 inch pulley. So we take this guy and this will be our final piece for our lat pull down. So the way this goes in is you have this arm right here. It's going to sit in the center of those two pieces right there. So we'll just push the pulley up into it, push the pulley and that whole bar into position, slide the bolt through. We'll go ahead and put that guy on the other side. And if you want to test it out, you should be able to just grab this and give it a pull. If you feel any kind of resistance, I have a considerable amount of resistance on this right now, and you'll see there's only 10 pounds here. We didn't actually come off of a pulley. Remember earlier I spoke about those hanging pulleys, that floating pulley we need to put on? So, that's this guy right here. So we're gonna take that cable that I showed you earlier that's hanging right where that rubber piece is. Give yourself some slack. So take your pin, raise it up a few, and just sit it on that top plate. That'll give you a bunch of play for this cable, so you don't have to worry about smashing your fingers or any of that fun stuff. And then we'll literally just take the pulley, put it right onto the cable, set it down inside of the floating housing. We'll keep these bolts uniform at least. There you have it, that floating pulley has been installed. You may get a little twist on it sometimes, just when you are getting to the last steps of installation. Try and make sure that you haven't let it completely twist on itself. If you have, just untwist it. Once you put the tension on this side, it should keep it straight. So now that we got that installed, we're gonna go ahead and pull on this cable again, just to make sure that everything is smooth. Smooth as could be. No added resistance, no scraping, no scratching, none of that stuff. You don't want any of that. If you're getting any of that, then there's something going on down the line, and I would suggest figuring it out before you move on. So this cable is relatively easy to install. This is basically a counterbalance cable for your leg extension, or if you had a leg press later, this will be the cable that's involved with that. So first thing we're gonna do is we're going to take your jam nut and go ahead and screw it into this hole. Again, we only need about a 1/2 inch or so. So we got about a 1/2 inch in there. Next we have a floating pulley that we need to install. So this pulley is actually a little bit later in the chain. So for now, so we're installing this floating pulley. The way we want to do it is we want to make sure that the cable is routed towards the back of the machine. Go ahead and set your pulley right onto the cable. Pulley inside of this pulley housing. And you go ahead and get your bolt through. Washer and a nut. All right, floating pulley installed. This is going to be our next pulley in line. This is a wide 3.5 inch pulley. I'll show you how it's installed. So we're down the line from that original floating pulley. We want to make sure that we stay ahead of that and don't install it behind it. And it's just as it looks, just pulley. Put the cable right on top of the pulley, put it in place. It's just that simple. We'll put that nut on. All right, that one is good to go as well. All right, so next you're gonna grab another 3.5 inch wide pulley. You install this pulley as you're gonna see this 19 millimeter bolt right here, also a 3/4 bolt. And you just line it up with it, and we're gonna go ahead and just cinch that down. We don't have to go too far down. You just want enough that it's not spinning, just like that. And it does seem kind of counterintuitive, but this cable is actually going to go on the outside of this pulley instead of the inside like we have been doing. Hence why you need this guard. This is going to keep that cable from jumping out of place. So right now I'm holding the pulley in place by holding the cable up, and then we just slide that bolt in. Sometimes you got to get to the other side to line it up. Luckily I didn't have to on this one. And it's just that easy. Boom. That one's installed. Moving on with the installation of these cables. Next point is going to be this pulley right here. As you can see, it is already installed. It's not going to be installed on your machine. You have to install it yourself. I'm gonna go ahead and take this off real quick just so we can get the cable in. Otherwise, you're trying to squeeze it past this guard, which won't do you any favors and could likely damage your pulley cable. So the last thing you want, once this thing starts fraying, we start recommending that it gets replaced. Because the last thing you want to do is be pulling 150 pounds, have a cable snap. We've had people talk about almost breaking facial bones because they're pulling something towards their face. All right, and continuing on, next we're going to route this cable through this floating pulley up top. So again, this is already installed, but you're going to need to install it yourself. And we're routing the cable back towards the machine. So you see how I have this cable in my left hand going back towards the machine? That is important. We need to make sure that you're doing that. All right, we are almost there. All right, and then the final part of the installation of this cable is actually connecting that to this floating pulley. So we'll go ahead and pull this cable all the way down. We got this floating pulley right here. We'll get about a 1/2 inch of those threads in there, cinch down that jam nut. We'll just leave it hand tight for now. We'll come back with a 3/4 later and we will cinch everything down. Next, we're going to install your leg cable. This is going to allow you to do leg extensions and leg curls. There are a couple of little interesting things that you need to take note of when you're installing this. If you come over here real quick, see if we can actually see this. It's kind of hard to get a visual on, but if you shine right down in here, you'll see that there is a cable guard that's in there. We need to make sure that we stay under that cable guard. So when doing this, you're gonna put it under that cable guard and you're trying to get into that hole right there. It can be a little bit of a task. Just keep trying. Eventually, should be able to get that to come out just like that. And then we'll take that jam nut that we got for this and hold on to it as long as you can. Try and guide it back down into that hole, because if you let go too soon, it'll come right off and you'll have to start all over and it's not fun. Kind of hitting that now, actually. See, even me, I've been doing this for as long as I have. I still have problems with this one part in particular. There we go. All right, so now we have that lined up. Next, we need to install our pulley. So the first pulley we're going to install uses 2 of those spacers. And this one goes right here. We're going to go ahead and push that cable in, take our bolt, run it through with the spacer. Bam. That one's on. That's all that one needed. So that one is now connected. So next thing we need to do is take our cable and we're going to route it right through the body right here. And we're going to use another standard 3.5 inch pulley. All right, take that pulley and we'll push the cable up just like that. Now this is one of the harder pulleys to do. If you don't have big hands, I would suggest maybe asking somebody to help you, because you're going to need to be able to hold onto the bolt and move the pulley up into place and then feed the bolt through. I'm lucky enough that I'm able to do it with my pinkies and thumbs, but if you got another set of hands around, I would suggest asking them to get it into place for you. Otherwise, you could be there all day. So this pulley also requires a guide bolt. You'll see this is this standard bolt right here. We're going to go ahead and insert it right here. Make sure that the cable stays underneath this. If it is over it, just put some extra tension on that cable on the back end over here. You just pull like this, and that'll sit the cable down into the pulley so that you can put this bolt in. So this is the last part of the leg extension, leg curl. We're going to go ahead and run the cable up through the bottom here. You can probably get a better shot of it right here. We set our pulley on top of that cable. We push it through. We're going to use two different spacers on this one. We got our standard 63, which is already installed right here, and then we need one of these long spacers for the other side. Because if you get back here and you take a look, you'll see that the pulley itself is offset. It's biased to the right. So we need that long spacer for the left side and the short spacer for the right side. That's what we're using those spacers for. And then the last step of this is we're going to go ahead and attach this floating pulley to our leg extension leg curl. And we're going to tighten that down until there's minimal slack left in the cable. So you only really want maybe an inch of movement before it gives you a bunch of resistance. That's about all the movement we want right there. So we can go ahead and cinch down that jam nut a little bit. We'll tighten that with a wrench here in a little bit. But that is how you install your leg extension cable. Now that it's installed, we'll want to make sure that it's working properly. So usually I'll just do a couple of little single leg curls. And we're just making sure there's no scratching, scraping, binding of the cable. Feels good. Leg extension is done. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to install the cable for the side station. This allows you to do curls and low rows and all the things that you would do with a standard low pulley cable. We'll show you how you get it installed. So for me, what I'll usually do is I'll take this end and I will go ahead and throw a carabiner on it just so it's a little easier to manipulate. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take two wide 3.5-inch pulleys. We'll install one on the bottom first without the cable, just like so. And then we'll take the cable, run it through. Like I said, we're going to keep your carabiner out, just like this. And then we'll go ahead and install this top pulley, just like so. In she goes. All right. So our next step is installing the pulley for the floating pulley that's up top here. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and get this bolt out. And we'll take the pulley. Thing is we're going to have to route the cable back towards the machine. So we're going towards the front of the machine here. Insert the pulley, grab your bolt. Just like all the other ones, pull through the pulley, washer and nut on the other side. This one's a little different since we have this extra little armature here. There we go, now we're connected. So the next step is going to be the pulley down bottom. This is going to route us back up top because the last two pulleys we're going to put in are going to be for your ab workouts. So, all right, so the next pulley we're going to put in, we need to bias to the left, just like we had the bottom pulley bias to the right. This one needs to go to the left so we don't have any crossed cables. So what we'll do is we will take the cable coming from this floating pulley and we're going to route it towards the machine. And this has a little added extra piece of fun. So we have this guard plate right here that needs to go on it as well. So we take that guard plate and we let the spacer push it all the way over, just like so. And we're going to take our small spacer as well as this guide rod hanger right here. And we're going to go ahead and combine everything, just like that. And now that pulley's installed. So from here, it's pretty easy. Next, we go ahead and we can pretty much just take this cable. First, let's give yourself a little bit of slack, just so you got a little bit of grace. We'll just take this cable, just push it right through here for now. And then we're going to take the last 2 pulleys that we have, and we're going to go ahead and use those. So this is another instance of where we have one pulley that has a short bolt and flat washers, and then another pulley has a long bolt and curved washers. These curved washers are going onto the round bar here. Just make sure they're facing the right direction, or else you will bend them out of shape and they won't fit properly. So this one's real simple. So we just take our pulley, we put it on the top of the pulley, push the pulley into place. Ooh, sorry about that. Pulley's in place, just like so. We get that, washer and nut, we're good. The next pulley actually goes just right above it. And we're not even routing these. Like, we're not going in and out, we're just literally going right on top of it. So you got 2 pulleys, both going the same direction. There we go. We want to make sure that our washer is sitting flush against the round part right here. I always usually just take a second look just to make sure that I got it facing the right direction. And you'll see my cable hopped off of the pulley here. We're just going to grab it, put it right on the pulley just like so. And this one requires a guide bolt. So we got our guide bolt right here. We'll do the exact same thing we've done with every other guide bolt. We're going to make sure that the cable is down, guide bolt goes through, boom, we're in place. So this is a good learning moment right here. You can see right here that it looks like I may have put this on the wrong direction. Just spin it, you'll see it'll sit flush. All right, now we can just drop our stack down. Everything should fall into place. That is a properly cabled Hoist V Elite machine. You're going to want to double check and make sure everything is proper. So you'll go through and just give everything a little pull. Go ahead and set it on 10 pounds and just make sure you can move everything without any hesitation. So this is a good example right here. For some reason, this is feeling a bit more tense than it probably should. It may be due to the fact that, yeah, never mind, it's fine. It's due to the fact that there's no extra fulcrum on this. Once you have the press bar on it, it'll move much easier. We'll check this guy, just make sure, yeah, there's no hesitation or anything. Set it on its lowest weight too. That's gonna give you the best example of any kind of cable binding that may happen. If you have more weight on it, it'll just pull it through. So now that you've reached this point, you can go ahead and tighten everything down. I would suggest grabbing yourself a 9/16 impact wrench and a 9/16 hand wrench. That is going to be the vast majority of the bolts on this machine. Usually I'll start from the top and work my way down. I will also put a little bit of slack on the line just so I can reach certain elements like this floating pulley, for instance. If I left the cables all the way tight, this top pulley is going to be in here. I'd likely forget about it and not tighten it. And we don't want that to happen. So, like I said, starting from the top. And if you're using an impact drill, you really just want to go until the impact itself stops moving. You'll see an extra resistance that comes. You just go ahead and hit it until that point. These don't need to be extremely tight. They just need to be tight enough that you can't undo them with your fingers. All right, so like I stated earlier in the video, when tightening down the back base here, we have a certain pattern that we like to do. We like to do a cross pattern. If you come back here, you can kind of see how it's sitting. And this is where your impact really comes in handy because it has the extra force necessary. Because you'll see right here, if you look at this base, this back bar right now is sitting kind of cattywampus, kind of forward like this. That throws off the alignment of the entire machine. So when we tighten it, what we'll do is we'll do a cross pattern. So I will start on the bottom left. And you'll see how it sits up. We need to follow that pattern. We'll go to the top right, and then we'll do the bottom right, and then we'll do the top left. And you should be able to see now that it's sitting much straighter than it was. That puts the alignment of the machine back in place. That's where we need it to be. We got these last two bolts here that are also used for any kind of attachments you may add, whether it be a leg press or a high-low. They both attach to this. That's why you'll notice if you're doing the install yourself, these bolts are particularly long, much longer than any of the other bolts. They have more threading sticking out, and that's why, because this is where we will attach additional accessories. So next in line, we're going to be installing some upholstery. First thing we're going to do is our seat. So I actually already have all the bolts ready for this. These are going to be 13 millimeter. I know we've been using 14 millimeter / 9/16 if you're using standard all day. But for your upholstery, you're going to need 13 or a ½ inch. It's really pretty straightforward. This is your plate that your seat sits on. Just line those 4 holes up with the 4 holes that are on the bottom of the upholstery and just bolt it in. You're going to want to make sure that you don't go too tight. Those inserts that are in that wood, if you have too powerful of a drill, you can strip that insert and then it'll just spin forever and you'll have a loose seat. Not something you want. Now I would suggest, as with any bolt that's going directly into the threads, I would suggest starting with your fingers because you can much easier feel a cross thread with your fingers than you'll ever be able to feel with a drill. Also, once you cross thread these, it's pretty much game over. You'll need either a new insert or a new bolt, or you'll have to get a tap kit, which in itself is a bit of a hassle. All right, and once you have all of your screws in, you can go ahead and tighten. Just quick. And for these, sometimes I'll use my extension just because I don't have to move around as much. I mean, if you're doing this, you know, once, it's probably not that big of a deal to move around a lot, but when you're like me and you do multiple installs of these per day, the less you can crawl around on your knees, the better. All right, so the next thing we're going to install is your seat back. The easiest way to do this is to just go ahead and install the back on the back pad before you actually install it onto the machine. So just like we did last time, we're going to use our fingers to start these, just so we don't cross thread. And this is an instance where you may want to use a level just to make sure that it is installed completely level. I'm not doing that on this one because it was previously installed, so now there's basically an outline as to where it goes, so I can just go off of that. But just use one of these ledges right here, turn it on its side or stand it upright and level it out before you drive your bolts. And then we go ahead and take this guy. You will see this gold bushing right here. That's where this guy right here goes. And we just do them at the same time. So you're gonna have to pull that guy up. In you go. That should lock it into place. Also take note, if you want to come around on this side, there is this square bolt that's right here that you're gonna want to go ahead and just cinch down. That's just gonna make sure that if you pull the seat all the way out, it doesn't come flying out. Locks it in place. Seat's installed. Now we're gonna assemble the V4 press arm. So the first thing you're gonna do is grab your arm brackets. You'll see these have the gold bushings on them. We go ahead and we just line them up with these holes right here. Feed it through. Washer and nut on the other side. So when you're setting this up, I would say the easiest way to do it is to lay it down on the ground like this with these tabs up. That'll be the front of the machine. And then you just go ahead and attach both of these guys on either side. And these are going to be 19 millimeter or 3/4. These are going to be bolts that you want to probably start tightening with the impact. but you may need to loosen it with a hand tool to get that perfect mobility. So these are the arms that attach to the V4. Since you have this facing you the way you're supposed to, I will take the arm, and when you look at it, you'll see that there's a tab on the bottom. That tab on the bottom is a stop tab to keep it from going past its point of usability. So that tab is going to be facing you when you put it on. So you go ahead and have that tab facing you like I said, and just put the bolt through. We can put the nut and washer on. We're just going to hand tighten for now. We'll go ahead and cinch it down with a tool when we're closer to finishing. You do the same for the other side. And your bolt placement isn't too important here. You can go from outside to inside or inside to outside, whichever you prefer. I'm doing out to in right now. No particular reason, just because that's how I did the other side. All right. And then your next step is to hang the hangers, I guess we would call them. But this is where your arms lock into place. So with this, you'll see we have a nut side and a bolt side. That bolt side is going to be facing the inside of the arms. You want the lock to be facing outward. And then all you got to do, just feed your bolts through, just like so. And then you're going to take one of these guys, and all you got to do is just put the put the nut into that little shape that it has for it, and just keep going until you tighten. Super easy, right? Just like that. Now we're attached. We do the other side real quick, and then we'll tighten everything down, and you'll be set to go. And then once you have those attached, you should be able to lock these arms into place. With it laid down like this, they won't lock completely into place just because the back of the arm is going to hit the floor before they get into the locking mechanism. But I'll lock them back like that just so I can get to these bolts easier. So like I said, you can start with your impact just to get the vast majority of it done quickly. And you just want to tighten it down enough to where these black portions of the hanger butt up against those gold cushion bearings that are in there. Once they make contact, you can stop. We're going to have to go back over it just to make sure. See how this is standing? That's too tight. We don't want them that tight. So I'll go ahead and I'll go grab a manual ratchet, and we'll set this to loosen. And we'll just loosen enough that this falls freely. Just like that. Now that that falls freely, we know that that is loose enough. So we're good on that arm. Let's check the other one. This one's a little too tight as well, so we'll do the exact same thing. And that's how you assemble a V4 press arm. So the next thing that we're going to be installing is the press arm. So the press arm for this unit is actually a V4 press arm. You'll see right here, this says V4. It has some additional features to it, which also require it to be built out of the box. So you're going to take the longer of your two rods, this guy, and we're going to go in through here with these gold bushings. And we're going to hang this the same way we hung the hanger. I know that sounds a little confusing. Hang it the same way you hung the hanger. Easy enough. So we just go up and over, and we'll set it down onto the bar just like so. And these use that same half moon system that we were using on the other hanger. The thing that makes this one a little difficult is if you look over on this side, you have this adjustment right here kind of blocking your ability to get to here. So usually what I'll do is I'll mount the right side first, just so we have some kind of stability. So we'll just do this the same way we did the hanger. We push that half moon up against it, just like that. We'll go ahead and set the screw in place. We will start this one just to hold it in place. And then we will put the back one in. And like I said, go ahead and push that half moon up so you don't get any cross threading. And we can just tighten this bad boy down. Well, if I can actually hit the thing, there we go. There we go. All right, now with the other side, you can do this by yourself, but if you can get a hand, it wouldn't hurt. So first, I'll try and get this side. So what I'll do, well, luckily, there's a plate that goes right here that's not actually blocking my way right now. So this front one should be easy enough. Should be able to just get this one. I would suggest when doing these, get yourself an extension. This is, I believe, a 4-inch Milwaukee extension. That just helps a lot to get into these little crevices. So that one was easy enough. Now it's this back one that might be a little bit more difficult to get to. With that said, what I'll usually just do is I will just go ahead and push this forward. I'll use my knee to block the arm there, and that'll give you a line to get that. We just tighten all the way down, on both sides, of course. All right, that arm is installed. There's a locking mechanism that you also need to install for this press arm, which allows you to do back exercises like pulls, or you can do presses. Super easy to install. Easiest way to do this is you're literally just gonna line up these pins. You're gonna have to pull this pin out, but line up these two holes and then let the pin go so that it'll hold you in place. It'll work as a little guide for you. Use it to your advantage. And just like the other ones, if we're going directly into the machine, particularly if we're going directly into metal, that's kind of a theme of ours. If we're going directly into metal, we definitely try and start with our fingers, because cross-threading metal to metal is a no good. And we'll just tighten these down with an impact. And there you go. Now you should have fully installed press arm. Once you get it installed, I would suggest making sure it operates properly. We're gonna go ahead and pull this pin, put it to about the 2 or so. You don't necessarily have to have any weight on here. I usually like to keep it light because that's gonna be the easiest way to tell if it's gonna jump off of any pulleys. But then we're just checking to make sure that it's operational. It feels great, so we're good. That press arm is properly installed. So we're nearing the end here. This is going to be our shield mount. We need to put this on before we can put our shields on. So it's super easy. We just go back here. And the way we install this is we want to, all right, so we want to make sure that these are facing down and back, and that these are on either side of these bars. We line them up with these holes right here, and the instruction has us going from top to bottom, which isn't too much of a hassle. It's just a little awkward considering you have to hold the plate in place, hold the bolt in place, put a washer on, and then put a nut on. If it's your first time doing it, it might be a little difficult just because you have to manage holding everything at the same time. But I do promise it's possible. Just keep at it, you'll get it. And these are 9/16 or 14 millimeters, so we'll go ahead and tighten them down. All right, and tightening these down is super easy. It's just a 9/16 or a 14 millimeter. And we'll just go ahead and cinch them all the way down. Now we're ready to hang our shields. Now we're going to install the last part, which is going to be your shields. We use this as a protection for both you and your machine. Don't want you getting your fingers jammed in the plates. So, super easy. all we do is we take 4 of these bolts, and usually what I'll do is I'll hang it from the top down. Luckily, this one lines up really nicely. Sometimes there will be a slight misalignment where you'll just have to, I don't want to say brute strength it, but there's a little bit of that involved. And again, we're starting all these by hand because we do not want to cross thread. If we cross thread, the game's up. For these very back bolts, the ones that are along the frame, they're a little difficult to get to with your fingers. So usually what I'll do is I'll take my extension, my 4-inch Milwaukee extension, and the Allen key bit that I'm going to use, and I'll just use it kind of like a screwdriver. Just be careful. You need to be able to feel whether or not you're threading properly. If there's any additional resistance, you're probably starting to cross thread. But that's it. To put on the left side, we do the exact same thing that we did on the right side. I start from the top down, and then we'll fasten it. So your very last step for all of this is going to be attaching your accessories. The way I'd usually do this is, so we utilize this for our abs. So I put this little ab strap here, so that if you're trying to do any kind of crunches or anything along those lines, you can literally just sit in that seat, do your crunches. This is going to be your low pulley bar. This chain is usually on it just so that you have a little bit of negative space if you're trying to do curls. Instead of starting all the way down here, you start at a more reasonable area. That's what that chain's for. You can take that chain off if you're trying to do low cable stuff like rows and what have you. All right, this is our lat pull down bar. It has its own hanger, so go ahead and hook it on, hang it up. So this is our fleece lined leg strap. We use that for kickbacks and whatnot. The pulley that would usually use that is this guy, the low pulley. That is occupied, but luckily we have storage in back, so we'll just hang that on the back. And then these are your hand straps, chest straps, however you prefer to use them. I usually will just hang them on this V4 right here. Then you have this slot where you can just slide them in. And actually, the way you slide them, I just remembered, is like so. So once you finish the full assembly of this machine, I would suggest making sure that you pull all of the points that have weight on them, just to make sure that you haven't jumped off of any of the pulleys. If you have, just run through the chain of pulleys. You'll see the cable isn't where it's supposed to be. You put it back on there. If you're having issues with your weight pin properly going in, because sometimes we'll run into an issue where you'll try and go down to that bottom pin and it'll stick halfway out. It won't go all the way in. If you're having that issue, this comes directly from the manufacturer, Hoist. They say go ahead and get that pin in. It may cause you a little bit of stress, but go ahead and lock her in there. Then you want to come around to this side, grab this lat pull down. And I know asking you to do a 150-pound pull down can be a little bit of a task. If you got an extra set of hands, have them help you out. But what you want to do is you're going to want to pull it down, and then about 6 inches from the bottom, just drop it. I know that's against the rules as far as weight machines go. That is what Hoist told us. That will line your pin up. You should be able to go back there now, and it'll take all additional slack out of your cables. It'll do all sorts of stuff for you, but you should be able to go back here now and easily get your pin installed to where you need it to be. If not, you can always reach out to us.